Ever wonder what really is the difference between a more senior consultant and a more junior consultant is? Here's the spoiler alert. It's not just the experience alone. Yes, experience does make a difference, but that's on defining your actual business process or driving your expertise with knowledge. But the perception of being a more senior consultant is really based upon two very simple hacks. How do I know? I've been an SAP project manager for over 10 years, working on projects of all sizes and all industries, and these two things keep coming up. In fact, I've had consultants get taken off a project because they couldn't do these things as a part of their engagement. So let's walk through the details. Let's talk about what you can do so you can really measure up your skills and master these. Stick around, we'll get into the details, and trust me, you don't want to miss it. It really will make a difference in how you go into your next project. Let's get into it. So the first hack we're going to talk about is to focus on the business process. Now, what does that mean? Now, you understand I've been doing SAP, but anywhere you're doing an implementation of most softwares, even if it's custom developed, there's a business process to be had. Now, with tier 1 operating environments like an ERP, Oracle and SAP, a lot of them come with standard best practices. And what I mean by focusing on the business process, what I mean is really talking about breaking that down into individual elements. So let's just take an example. If I want to do consumable purchasing, it's really straightforward. You have a requisition, a request to buy. You have a purchase order, a request to buy to a supplier. And then you have a receipt of that material, and then you have a payment of that invoice. It's a basic process used in all systems today. What your goal is to break that down into its individual elements to make sure you understand what the customer's real desires are. Now, you may have a list of requirements that you're following. You may have a statement of work that you're following, but the goal here is to really get from the customer their needs and desires, the inputs and the outputs to that process. One of the most important things here is to go through each step. Make sure you have an understanding of that configuration that you're required to do. Understand the gaps that may be different than from that best practice. The real goal of using these best practices is to model to the customer what the expectation is. So in that example of a procurement situation of a consumable purchasing, a requisition is a very standard object. A purchase order is a very standard object. And you really want to find out the gaps that they have. What do they need? Hey, maybe I need a workflow. Great. Gather that information. Hey, I need the specific output. Great. Gather that information. You want to go through each step to get their buy-in. One, that you know what you're talking about, but you're able to consecutively go through each element and drive through it. Now, even if you're a junior consultant, you can read about these processes, you can understand them, and you can communicate them and drive through that. A lot of that has to deal with your preparation, and we'll talk about that and how to do that really well in another video. But here, what we're trying to implore you to do is really break down that process into each element to find out those gaps. The most important thing that you want to do, and the real reason for breaking it down, is you want to get that buy-in from the customer and how they're going to test it, or what is their definition of done. Great, we have a consumable purchasing process. We've discussed it in great detail. I understand all of your gaps, but how are they going to test it? That is your ability to go in and validate it. And many times you learn new things. Hey, I've got a consumable purchasing that does A, and I need something that does B, and I need something that does C. Great. Those are 3 different tests that we can use to validate the work. And now you know your definition of done. So quickly, by focusing on that business process, you have the elements of what is the scope, what are the requirements, what are the inputs and outputs that you'd expect, what gaps do you need to go figure out, and how they're going to validate it and test it. Now, when you come into a situation in a business process, especially if you're a junior consultant, don't worry if you get surprised by something. Just look at the customer and say, that's great. We didn't expect that, but these are the things we're looking to really figure out. If you follow a lot of the core functionality, then we can get through that pretty quickly. But we're going to want to spend time on those unique differences that make your company specifically unique to the implementation. And so use that as an opportunity not to get concerned and worry and show, any concern on your face. You want to use that as hey, this is a great opportunity, and really drive into the next step. You're looking for those things so you can make sure you can get as much pulled out of that customer and you get that definition of done. So in summary, What you want to do is focus on the business process to break it down to understand the real requirements, the real gaps, and the real activities, and make sure you get that definition of done, list by list of each scenario, and do that for every business process. If you can do that really well, even if you don't know how to configure it, even if you don't know all the definitions, if you can effectively communicate that with your customer, it will make a significant difference in how you're expected to be and your level of expertise in the view of that customer. So great. Now you have all the business processes, you've laid them out, and you understand everything that needs to be done. A major business process broken down into individual steps and even the definition of done. And now you can go execute that into your configuration or your development or whatever you need to do to make that functional for your customer. But now what you need, and that's really the second hack to really drive, is you need a plan. Now, I'm a project manager, and planning is something that comes very natural to me. But for a lot of consultants, they don't do very good planning. And I'm not saying go build a 300-line WBS element inside Smartsheets or Project or some other tool. What I'm just talking about is getting, once again, the buy-in from the customer on the actual dates and deliverables and what needs to be done. And it just isn't with the customer. It's with your fellow consultants, it's with developers, it's with your project manager. When I talk to my consultants on a project, I look at everyone and say, listen, you're the lead of your area. Even if it's just a small section of the work, I expect them to lead. That means they need to own their business processes, their data, their outputs, the testing, the whole thing, soup to nuts. And so having a good plan to go do that is really important. So as a project manager, I communicate key dates and deliverables, and what I'm looking for them to do is turn those into actionable steps. Those for things that they need to do themselves and also things to do with the customer. So let's go back to that consumable purchasing option that we just talked about in the business processes. Let's say you need a copy of their output. Let's get a date to deliver that from the customer. Let's make sure we get a date from the development side to understand what that is. And let's put some dates around, what needs to be done when, so you can effectively meet your dates. Now, in another YouTube video, I'll actually talk about how to schedule your day and how your week and really become the most effective in going through that plan. But any simple plan you can put in front of a customer, once again, get their buy-in and drive to those dates will really make a significant difference. It just shows that you're well organized and ready to get work done. Once again, it's nothing about your expertise or your skills or anything like that. It's just about how you come into a consulting opportunity and really drive it forward. Having those dates, delivering them, holds a level of accountability, both for you, to your project manager, and to your customer. So the real power is not business processes by themselves or having a plan by itself, but it's mirroring those two together as you go through the process of your project. So let's take SAP again. There's phases that need to be done contractually and per the methodology. The first major phase is explore. And that's when you're really defining what are those business processes to be implemented, what processes need to be adjusted, and what is the areas of development and integration and the overall scope of the work to be done. If you can drive those actions and activities to break down that process and define that design with a high quality, simple steps and dates to drive that, it will make a significant difference with your customer. And as you go through that from a build perspective and from a test perspective, if you're effectively communicating weekly and every 2-week goals, you really will get a different level of interaction with your customer. They will see you as a more senior person driving the project, no matter the skill sets you have, no matter the experience level. What they like to see is somebody walk in with a plan, executing to it, and then driving it out. You always have time to work on issues and concerns, and I'm sure with inside your community, you can get help if there's something you don't know. I mean, SAP and Oracle and all these are very large products, and it's very difficult to know everything. But you as an individual contributor can make a significant difference by owning your business processes, driving your dates, and making sure that your deliverables are met with inside that project plan. So those are the 2 simple hacks. Be an expert in your business processes, driving them to completion, and have a plan to execute your area of the project. It sounds simple, and many people try to do it, but over the course of a project, every 3 or 6 or 9 months that you may be doing it, many people just fall off that horse. What we're saying is that it makes a significant difference in the eyes of the customer. We really want you to drive in simple terms. It's really easy to build a plan and drive your components in an every 2-week cycle. You can report on it, you can effectively do it, and it will make a difference. Like I said, I've had people get pulled off projects because they not effectively communicate where they stand and what they're doing, and ultimately fall behind because they just weren't keeping track. When those things occur, there's 2 things can happen. 1, you've got to work a lot of nights and weekends, or 2, you get pulled off the project and have to go find a new project. Neither of them really get you where you want to be. So what we're saying here is own your work, drive the process, and execute your plan. And if you can do that day in and day out, experience will come, more projects will come, you'll be able to get a better bill rate, and you'll be seen as a more senior consultant. Well, I hope this helps, and while it may seem very simple, it really is an important task to learn as to be an effective consultant. I'll be teaching a lot more of these skills and activities from my experience of being a project manager, and so check out my latest video, and I look to see you in the next one. Thanks and have a great day.